Hi Soundies. Today we're going to be looking at binaural mixing. In fact, we're going to be looking at pans in general. The pan that we've been using up to this point has been something that we call balance. It's this here. And that's the default. It says pan, but really it is balance. And balance it's nominative determinist. It is there to balance the signal between left and right speakers. So if you're listening to some music at home and you've got a stereo amplifier and you're not listening directly between two speakers, you're not, in the middle, maybe you're off to one side, you can move the balance over slightly to increase the volume of the left speaker to compensate for that mix. So you get a little bit more from the left speaker, and so you get a more balanced signal. And that's fine. And it's fine to use that, but what we do actually also have is something called pan, and I'm going to show you that first. So let me just acquaint you to my timeline. This is my Avant-Garde and Apple Loops timeline for the exercise that we're doing. That's not due in this week, but the following week, because I want you to mix certain elements in binaural stereo. So I've kind of set things up here to demonstrate the difference between stereo and binaural. This is particularly true of these sounds here. These are all sounds that I generated. Actually, they're a coffee cup or a tea mug. And this to create a kind of squeaky sound. And these vocal zone to give me a kind of snare kind of sound, and then I've treated them all. And so they're my kit. And these are all stereo, as you can see, was set by the balance. And then I've just chopped them right at the same point. And these are all the same files, except I've created new tracks for binaural panning, with the exception of Abstract Atmos 1, which is still on stereo because I'm using that to demonstrate this clip today. And I'm not going to remix all of this while you sit there watching. I'm just going to demonstrate what binaural mixing will do and what pan will do, concentrating primarily, of course, on binaural mixing. And there are a few things that we need to do to set up. So first of all, because I'm using more than one binaural channel, I'm going to create a sub-out with binaural post-processing plugin. Let me just open up this here. So this is what our binaural panel looks like. Let's put that. Yeah, that's better. Now, if I click on this little arrow here, it's got diffuse field compensation. Yeah, and that compensates for headphone listening. And we would want to switch off. I beg your pardon. It's there to enhance headphone listening, and what I need to do is switch that off for all of these input channels. So let's just start with this one. Switch that one off. Let's do the same with these. I'm going to switch them all off because they are quite heavy in terms of processing power. So what makes a great deal of sense is if we then direct all of these binaural tracks to an auxiliary output which has this in it, so it affects all binaural tracks simultaneously and takes away some processing power demands. So there we are. I've done all of that. So I've switched all of those off. I can switch these down. We'll look at this in a minute. First of all, let's create our auxiliary output track. So I'm going to go to the mixer. I've created a new kind of icon. I'll tell you how to do that if anybody's interested, but not for this clip. So I'm going to highlight all of these. These are all of my binaural tracks, including this one, which will be binaural once I've demonstrated. Switch read off for a minute. And I'm going to select bus 1. There we go. And there suddenly bus 1 appears. You can see it's bus 1, though it's called auxiliary 3. So I'm going to call that binaural. And then I'm in the little window, in the inserts. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to select imaging. Then I'm going to select binaural post-producing, or post-processing rather, stereo. And we have this. And the default is headphones DF, averaged over all directions. That's what we want. We've got various options. If we're doing speaker playback, we can select this, and this kind of compensates for when it's playing back a binaural sound on speakers, because binaural doesn't really work on speakers. It only really works on headphones. Front facing, horizontal. What we want is this one, because we might have sounds above us, below us, behind us. So we want it averaged over all directions. That's what we want. Don't worry about this. This is the speaker angle, and it only becomes active when we switch that on, or when we select, oops, wrong one, speaker CTC. CTC stands for crosstalk cancellation. And it only comes on when we select that, which we're not doing. Headphone DF, averaged over all directions. There. So that's all we need to do to worry about that. That means that all of our sounds, all of our signals for the binaural tracks are outputted through this sub-output, and so the diffuse field compensation is activated for all tracks that are routed through here. Okay, so let's just play. I'm going to talk to you first of all the difference between balance and pan. So balance, as I said, is when you're compensating for your receiving position in a particular space. So if you're not directly between the two speakers, if you're off to one side, you can compensate by raising the level a little bit of the other speaker, the speaker that is further away. So I'm just going to play the sound. I've chosen a particularly stereo-y type sound. So let's have a little listen. So you can hear very definite things coming from different speakers, different headphones. So if I pan this way, pan that way, it would help if I had my headphones on the right way around. So this panning to the right, or balancing to the left, to the right. You get the idea. And this is the default setting, and I've not taught you anything else, but now I'm going to right click. This is this track here, so I'm on here, look. And I'm going to right click on the pan pot, and I'm going to select stereo pan. And this has a slightly different effect in the sense that it's not for balancing, it's panning all of the signal along. So I'm going to press play, and I'm going to do some panning. Can you see? The green represents the width of the stereo. So at the moment it's at its most widest. But if I pan here, you see that you get less and less until essentially it's a monophonic signal. And then so let me just open this wide open again. And what we can also do is we can narrow the width of the stereo, like so. So it's not as wide now, is it? And then we can then still position that stereo from coming over here. And it sounds that way because not so much that we've made this particular headphone speaker louder, is that it takes longer for the sound to reach this side. And that's a kind of a compensation thing. That's how we can tell where stuff is. If a sound's coming from over there, it hits this ear before it hits this ear. That's how we can tell direction. And this reflects that. So we get in the center, we've got a nice little, quite a narrow, and let me widen it up a bit. And there we have the full wide. So from now on, when you come to balancing in stereo, I want you to use the stereo pan and not the balance. There's nothing wrong with using the balance. This just gives you a little bit more scope. It's a little bit more fluid. It's a little bit more organic. It represents how we hear in the domain rather than how we listen to a hi-fi system. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is binaural panning. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select binaural pan. And there we have it. You can also select it by clicking on the output and selecting binaural pan or Barons or stereo pan, whatever you want to use. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to open this up a bit now. And here we have it, Abstract Atmos 1 binaural. And this kind of represents a standard stereo sound. The width that we would expect to have, spread over 90 degrees, and it's 1 meter, 50 centimeters away from us. And these are the various criteria. So this is known as the puck. And what we've got here is the planar view. And that allows us, this is where we are, here, that's our point of reference. And the sound that we're listening to, a stereo sound, is 1.5 meters away. We can change the size of that by making it further away. And the great thing about the planar mix, I'm going to play it now, is that you can set your default level or your quietest level, the sound is furthest away, and then you don't have to alter this anymore, because as this moves closer, the stereo narrows, because stereo left and right will narrow as we come closer and closer to the sound itself until it's essentially monophonic or immersive. So as I drag that down, these will be dragged along this line as well till the point we get to here, and it gets louder. And also the tonal qualities of the sound change, because the further we are away from sound, the fewer frequencies, higher frequencies we can actually hear. So a sound that's quite far away will be kind of mid and low frequencies. And this is what this emulates. So as we drag the sound closer to us, we start to hear more and more high frequencies until it sounds like a sound that's close up to us. So this is what makes binaural mixing such an interesting way of approaching things, because you get that sense of distance built in. So anyway, let me just press play. And there we are. So I'm going to start dragging it closer, and it will get louder and narrower. And that's more or less. We can pan it, we can move it to the left, to the right, let's take the distance a bit. There we go. Let's make it a bit closer. There we go. We can widen the sound. And we can have the sound behind us. So this sound is emulating what it sounds behind us. Let's narrow it so it becomes a bit more obvious. There we go. So we can tell now that this sound is behind us. Let's go back to playing it again. Okay, so there's that part. Now we also have our horizontal and vertical planes. And at the moment, the tilt amount is 0, but we can tilt this. So I can just drag this down. So now the sound is a little bit below us. Or we can tilt it up. And the sound is a little bit above us. We can also tilt like so. So there we have it. We can narrow the stereo. So there we have it. And that's my favorite type. Now there is a different one, which is different mode, which is called spherical. And this basically is about where the sound is when it passes through us. So so this is our head. So this here would be the top of our head. So look at elevation here. Can you see elevation is at -20? So it's kind of there. And the sound will go over us. And it won't get louder. It'll just get higher and lower. Look at the elevation. See, this is not louder at all, but it is above us. Now it's behind us and it is below us. And the same is true when we... So it's how the sound passes our head. Frankly, it's quite good for spatializing environmental sounds, particularly, for example, when we want different sounds behind us, in, for instance, a film environment, different sounds behind us to the ones that we're looking at. So we could be on a roadside, so we have traffic behind us, but we're looking at some woods, so we have wood sound in front of us, or a playground with kids are playing in front of us. And we can sort of merge them together, so we can have the roadside sounds from that side and the kids playing from that side, or we can move them to that, you know, they might be over there or they might be over there, you know. So it gives us an immersive 360-degree field to play with, rather than the traditional 180-degree stereo field. And there we have it. Truth is, spherical is quite good, but it just does my head in, because I can never work out how that dot relates to that dot there. So how is that at the bottom when it's in the center? It just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just can't get it. So I don't use it. I use the planar, and I prefer it anyway because, see, look, I've moved those together, so it's hard to separate the left and right. But I can just type in, and that's separated enough for me to drag it open. There we go. Okay, so other things to remember. Other things to remember. We can, like everything else, we can write these effects in. What we can't do is write in the tilt amount, the vertical offset, the tilt amount, or the tilt direction, or the size. We can preset the size, but we can't write it to make it smaller and larger as we're going through, as we can with pan and volume. We have to preset those. So I'm going to close this particular one down, and I'm going to de-solo that, and I'm going to select this one here, which is an alarm sound. Let's loop that. Here it is, and this is actually a mono sound because it's something I took from the loops and sampled. So I may as well, I can either put them all together so it's a single solid thing. That was articulate, Reese, so that the left and right were together. I wonder if I convert the sound, at the minute it's, oh no, it wouldn't allow me to do it because it's a sampler track. I was hoping that I could turn it into a mono, but I don't think it's going to let me to do that. Okay, well, it doesn't make any difference. I can just drag these babies together and off we go. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to record movement, and also, because this is a slightly better effect, I'm going to switch the Doppler effect on. That's the only thing that I haven't yet shown you. And that creates a pitch shift in the way that a car passes at speed, and the frequencies rise as the car approaches you, and they seem to fall as they depart you. It's all about how sound waves reach you. And an approaching vehicle, the sound waves will be more condensed because it's coming towards you, but as it's departing, they become more expanded, and it appears that there's a tonal shift. And this Doppler here will ape that. I can't think of the right word, but it'll pretend there's a Doppler shift. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to click on right, and let's play the alarm. Let's start it off. Let's have it about 6 meters away. There's the Doppler. See, it's rising and then falling as I move it towards the point of where we're hearing. There we go, that'll do. So if I play that back now, it should, let's go to read, it should then have recorded all of those movements. There we go. Okay, you get the gist. I'm going to undo all of this because I'm going to be mixing this for real after I've finished this clip. There we go. There we go. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to mix your avant-garde and Apple Loops design in binaural. Now, that doesn't mean that every sound that you want or that you're using should be binaural. The great thing about binaural, it uses a stereo track, just like a stereo track. And so you can have binaural elements and conventional stereo elements. So things that are normally static, for instance, drums and bass and backline and that kind of stuff, and static sounds, you can leave as stereo. In the example that I gave, when you had the woodland in front of you and the cars behind you, theoretically the woodland could remain stereo and the background could be binaural, though in that instance I would have both because I would want to create that sense of distance. But, you know, philosophically speaking, there's no reason why you couldn't have a stereo track and a binaural track for that same kind of effect. So what I will be doing is I shall be putting binaural mixing on all the sounds that I want to move about or to create an immersive environment, whether they're static or move. Not so much with regards to this exercise, which is essentially a music track with binaural benefits, but certainly when we come to do scenographic constructs for sound to picture work, you could have static kind of elements creating an immersive environment. And then your Foley can move, but I would have your Foley in stereo, you know, because they're just moving across a horizontal plane. Unless, of course, it's walking towards the camera and behind, in which case you would have it binaural. We will play with all of this kind of stuff. This is really, I'm talking to third years now. Second years, you're not going to have to worry about any of that kind of stuff because all of your binaural will be sound only. And so you're limited only by your imagination. You're not limited by the demands of the diegetic frame. Okay, so there we have it. Any questions, just ask in class, either by putting your hand up or shouting up over the loudspeakers if you're online. But yeah, do a binaural mix, decide what binaural elements you want and what stereo ones you want. Like I said, bass and kind of rhythmic stuff tends to be stereo. All the movements, swirly, synthy, kind of funky things can be binaural. And you bounce as normal. Okay, well done. Have a cup of tea and then start playing. And we will be playing back binaural stuff next week. And I'll be uploading all of your designs onto the YouTube channel for the week after so that everybody can have listened to everybody else's and you can tell your friends, should you wish to. Go have a cup of tea. I'm going to.